Well, just like that, the rumor mill is heating up again. We have the Fernando Tatis fad for a couple of days. I think we all know that was bullshit. And now our latest rumor, well, we're going to dive into that tonight. Welcome to the show, everybody. Episode 937 of the podcast. Thank you for tuning in to BD4 if you have. Thank you for listening, watching, however you're consuming this podcast. You can find BD4 on the many platforms. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Just be sure wherever you do listen or watch this podcast, give us a 5-star rating, like, subscribe, share this episode with your friends on social media, all the good stuff just to help us grow. Now, let's talk. Let's talk because actually, as I'm recording this, it's the fourth quarter of the Knicks-Boston game. The game got so abysmal, I decided to turn it off early and talk Yankees because the New York Yankees are apparently a candidate to trade for Sandy Alcantara. A couple of days ago, now as I'm recording, it is Tuesday, December 2nd. So I think this was either the 30th of November or the 29th. Jim Bowden, I think an MLB reporter went on. He was a former GM. I know who he is. I just don't know if it's Bowden or Bowden. Jim Bowden went on MLB radio and spoke about the option of Sandy Alcantara coming to the Yankees. And I'm going to pull up his exact comments here so I can read them to you word for word. And he goes, so he's on MLB Network Radio, and he says, I also think Sandy Alcantara of the Marlins has a legitimate shot of getting traded to the New York Yankees. I know they've had a lot of discussions. I think if the Yankees decided they would give up Spencer Jones, think of this for a minute, they could sign Kyle Tucker in free agency and then trade for Spencer Jones, and then trade Spencer Jones for Alcantara. Now you've added Kyle Tucker and Sandy Alcantara to the team that won 94 games last year. And that would be a game changer for them. You know, a lot of the time when a reporter speaks, you kind of got to pay close attention. But a lot of the time when reporters do speak, a lot of people just take it as the gospel. A lot of people arguing over, Jim Bowden, is this guy ever right? A lot of the time he's incorrect. I don't know. I don't even see this as Jim Bowden hinting at anything, to be honest. I think he just, like, the way it came across to me, it came across more like an opinion than anything else. But obviously the Yankees have discussed trades with the Marlins before, centered around Sandy. And listen, this is a pitcher who, when he is healthy and when he is right, you can make a case he's the best starting pitcher in the National League. He won a Cy Young back in 2022. He actually won that award over Max Fried, who plays second. But not only did he win Cy Young that year, he placed top 10 in MVP voting, and that was one of his 2 All-Star selections so far in his career. And he's had an 8-year career where he has a 3.65 ERA, so very good. He is, he's one of my favorite pitchers in baseball, at least for me. Like, I think he's fun to watch. He has some great stuff. He's got a power arm. He's a really cool pitcher to watch pitch. As a pitching guru, a nerd who loves just watching pitching, talking pitching, learning about pitching, studying pitching. I loved watching Sandy in that Cy Young year. I didn't watch Marlins game, but I watched a lot of highlights and film of him. So when he's right, when he's healthy, he's elite. Obviously, the caveat here is he's got an injury history, and clearly, he's coming off of Tommy John's, or he came off of Tommy John's surgery. Can't speak right now. I'm thrown off by how bad the Knicks played tonight. But he's coming off his first season post Tommy John surgery, which wasn't great, right? Through 31 starts in this past season, Sandy had a 5.63 ERA in 172 and 2/3 innings. However, he did find a rhythm towards the back end of the season. As you kind of expect, guys who make their first stint back, by guys who come off Tommy John, it's never going to be right away. Nobody should ever expect them to be sharp right away. And a lot of the time, they aren't sharp for the entire season. But you look at Sandy Alcantara last year, in his first 19 starts, he had a 7.14 ERA. In his last 12 starts since then, he had a 3.13 ERA. And if you want to dive in deeper, his last 8, a 2.68 ERA. So there was a point there at the end where he found a little bit of rhythm. And that's what you're banking on right now. You're banking on that being sustainable for the next 2 years of his contract, because that's what he's got left. Miami has control of him for 2 more seasons. And it's a pretty cheap deal, all things considered. It's only $17 million for next season. And then there's a club option on him for $21 million in 2027. So they're still trying to deal him while they can get something for him. And I think they're going to deal him at some point. If it's not this winter, it's going to be before the deadline, because they've got a great rotation with some young arms. They've got Cabrera, they've got Yuri Perez, they've got that top prospect coming up through the system. Weathers is there, Myers, Garrett, like they got a lot of arms. They can afford to move Sandy. But obviously the risk in trading for someone like Sandy comes not with the contract, but the prospect capital that you're giving up, right? And when you look at a guy like him, it's been a minute since he was in peak form. He had a down year last year. He missed all of 2024 with the Tommy John, and then he had a very up and down 2023, maybe because he had to get the Tommy John. Recently just turned 30 years old, so he's on the wrong side of that. You're going to have to give up some capital. I believe earlier today, actually, Baseball America released their top prospects of 2026. And so if you look at that list, there are some names that could possibly be in this deal. George Lombard Jr. is their number 1 prospect. Elmer Rodriguez Cruz is their number 2. Dan Kilby is number 3. Carlos LaGrange is number 4. I'm certain I'm saying his name incorrectly, but everybody knows who that is. He's the kid who throws 103. Ben Hess, number 5, and they have Spencer Jones at 6. But those are just some of the guys in that top 10. Cunningham is 7. I think if we're talking about a trade for Sandy, I'm thinking it's going to include one of Dominguez or Jones. If you do that, that opens up the Kyle Tucker avenue again, right? But I just don't think, like I saw somebody say, like if the Yankees trade for Sandy, they're not serious about winning, which I thought was odd, because I feel like it's the opposite, because you can't keep both Dominguez and Jones. It makes zero sense to do that after bringing Grisham back for $20 million. They're not going to, obviously Judge is going to play. Obviously Grisham's going to play. And so between Tucker or Bellinger and Dominguez and Jones, only one of those guys is going to get a spot in the outfield. Obviously injuries can happen, but these are 2 of your top prospects. You have to imagine the Yankees are going to take advantage and trade one of them. Now, Dominguez, listen, the Yankees have shown, okay, that they haven't really loved him as a prospect for a bit now. You know, it goes back to before last year, you know, when they didn't promote him. And then you get to last year when Grisham just stole the job, took over, and Dominguez was kind of fizzled out by the end. Didn't get into the postseason much. I think he got one at bat. And now, after Grisham gets this raise where he's back on a new contract, it's pretty much sealed Dominguez's fate, at least as this staple in the Yankee lineup for the next decade. Seems like it's going to be that way for me. I don't think they're going to take another year to develop him and send him back down. And I don't think they're just going to stash him on the bench all year. I think something's going to be going to have to happen. The problem is if you trade Dominguez right now for Sandy, you have to attach a lot else to it because you'd be selling very low on Dominguez. His value is at an all-time low. Whereas if you're looking at someone like Spencer Jones, who's coming off a very strong season after his value was low a couple years ago, it's back at an all-time high. Like the hype's there again. He had himself a good year. The Yankees almost traded for Sandy this past deadline. I think what took them out of it was they didn't want to include Spencer Jones. So I wonder if that's changed by now, and you just wonder if Cashman is willing to. And then you also have to look in the rotation where it's like, okay, Luis Heel, Will Warren, Clark Schmidt. It's kind of difficult to envision all three of those guys as long-term solutions next year, especially because Carlos Rodon and Garrett Cole are at least expected to return next year. Definitely Rodon. So you look at the whole thing, and it's Garrett Cole, it's Max Fried, it's Rodon. Let's say they get Sandy. It's Schlittler, it's Heel, it's Warren, and it's Schmidt. That's 8 starting pitchers right there. So if everybody gets healthy, let's just say in a perfect world, things work out the way you want them to, your staples, your guarantees for the rotation are going to be Cole, Fried, Rodon, your veterans. Schlittler, you have to imagine, becomes a lock. And then Sandy, if you trade for him. That's 5 guys right there guaranteed to pitch in the second half. And that leaves Warren, Heel, and Schmidt on the outside looking in. So those guys, I'd imagine, are going to be trade chips sometime this winter, or at least in the beginning of next year. So I just trying to put together a potential package. I think it's going to have at least one of Dominguez or Jones, and then one of their starting pitchers in the back end there. And I'm really like, the upside with Sandy is enticing. Knowing the type of pitcher he is, he's an innings eater. He's going to give you innings, 175 or more innings in 5 of his last 6 seasons. I'm kind of cheating because this past year he was just a tick below that. But, 170 whatever plus innings in 5 of his last 6 seasons is pretty freaking good in today's game. And he's a pitcher that really mixes and matches well. He's got a very evenly balanced pitch mix. The sinker, the four seam, the change, the slider, the curve. In 2023 or in 2022, when he won the Cy Young, he used all 5 of those pitches. Or he didn't throw the curve then. He used all of his pitches from 22 to 28% of the time. The following year, he used all of his pitches from the 20 to 29% range. And then this past season, he used all of his pitches from the 16 to 25% in usage. So he mixes it up pretty well. Deep mix and a mix that he uses very balanced. The four-seam fastball and the sinker are still high-velocity pitches for him. He goes 97 plus. He'll touch triple digits. It's tough to hit those fastballs with his arm slot. It's a very low arm angle. So when he's healthy, he's a guy who, he's a guy who induces a lot of chase. He gets guys to swing outside the zone with the changeup and with the slider. The changeup's been an excellent pitch for him. It gets a lot of swing and miss, and it generates weak contact. It has a 30% whiff rate every single year of his career, except for this past season, where his changeup yielded a 28% whiff rate. And the exit velocities on that changeup sit 87 miles an hour or lower in 7 of his 8 major league seasons, including last year. So it's a good ground ball and swing and miss pitch. The slider's a good pitch. It also generates swing and miss. Same thing, 30% whiff rate every single year of his career, except for this past where it was 25%. So the stuff is still pretty good when you're talking about velocity, and maybe the break has fallen off a little bit, but that's not the concern. The concerns from the 2025 season, when you peel it back a little bit and you look at some of the peripherals, the low strikeout rates, the low whiff rates. Now, he's not ever been a guy who gets a ton of strikeouts and gets a ton of whiffs. He usually sits around league average in those stats. This past year, though, it was a big jump down. He was 17th percentile in whiff rate, 23rd percentile in K rate, and he also got a lot less chase, which is a big thing when he's on, right? He allowed a lot of pull side power. He allowed a lot of barrels, and he gave up a lot of home runs, which is not a good sign for a sinker baller. His sinker this past season yielded a 275 batting average. That's also a bad sign when you consider that he's given up pull side power and he's going to be pitching in Yankee Stadium for half his starts. To give up that quality of contact, it's tough to see him succeed, right? His rate in terms of allowing pulled balls in the air was 2% worse than league average this year. Barrel rate was about 1.5% worse than league average, and he allowed 1.1 home runs per 9 innings this past season. I'm going to reiterate, I don't think it was a stuff issue as much as it was a location. I think he had some very poor location, especially when he first got back in the first half. The four-seam fastball and the curveball, looking into it, those two pitches accounted for about 60% of the home runs that he allowed. I think he allowed 23 or 22, but he was missing spots with the four seam and with the curve a lot. So overall, I think it's a risky trade for sure. It's one of those high risk, high reward trades. You're banking on him to return to Cy Young form. It's tough because if it's something like location, rediscovering location after long layoffs and surgeries is the toughest part for starting pitchers. They will tell you that. Look at Garrett Cole when he came back from his injury a couple years ago, right? That's what I'm concerned about. Because, it's kind of a running joke. Not a joke, but a running thing in the Yankee fan base where it's like Matt Blake's a magician. Listen, Blake can tweak grips. He can add pitches. He can help do a lot of things. But location is more pitcher dependent, right? Sandy was already a ground ball guy. Okay, he was never a high strikeout guy. And with his K rates and his whiff rates and all that lowering even more, you're losing command on top of that. That's kind of a recipe for complete disaster if they get that Sandy Alcantara in the next 2 years, right? So it's certainly a risk. I certainly get the hesitancy if you're a fan who's like, I would rather lean another way. But the Yankees need starting pitching. They need pitching, to be honest, right? Because they gutted half their bullpen already with a bunch of non-tenders, and they just lost Evan Williams to some other team I forget about. And they've got major rotation concerns, right? I mean, their rotation is right now just in bandages. Garrett Cole is returning from Tommy John. He's already seen a decline in his stuff, right? You saw the drop-off. Who knows how good he's going to be when he gets back, whenever that may be. He's going to be 36 by the time they get into the postseason. I don't know if Garrett Cole is ever going to be, I'll say it right now, Garrett Cole is never going to be peak Garrett Cole again, okay? I think those days of him pitching 200 innings and those days of him racking up 200 strikeouts and those days of him being, a 7 innings, 1-run pitcher every 5 outings are gone. Okay, I think he could still be a very good pitcher. I think he can still be one of the better pitchers in baseball, but what's that mean, right? I don't know. He's a question mark. I don't know what Garrett Cole is going to be like. Carlos Rodon, he had a nice season last year. It was a really strong one, built off of an okay 2024, but as a great 25, this stuff has started to decline. The velocity dipped. The stuff was not the same. He's older. It's not what it was when he was younger with Chicago and San Fran. He's 33 years old. He's already injured. He might see a decline. I don't think he's going to be what he was last year. I don't think he's going to be terrible, but if he's healthy, I don't know. That's a question itself. And then it's a lot of young prospects. It's Cam Schlittler. It's Will Warren. As great as Cam Schlittler was, as many flashes as Will Warren showed at times, prospects are unpredictable. Rookies are unpredictable. Louis Heel, questionable, right? We still don't know. Hopefully he takes this offseason, builds himself back up. But when he was out there last year, the velocity dipped, the swing and miss wasn't there, and he was still walking guys. Clark Schmidt, will he even be back this year? I don't know. So really, you look at the rotation, and the only lock that you can consider a frontline arm guaranteed for next year is Max Fried, right? Knock on friggin' wood with that, Jesus. So you get someone like Sandy, it's like, well, he can be a frontline arm, but he's not really a lock. So at the end of the day, you ask yourself, and we did an episode on him a couple of episodes ago. Go check that out. Is Tatsuya Imai the safer bet? He probably is the safer bet, right? Because with Imai, it's just money. You also probably have a higher floor. I feel like it would be nice to get a little younger in the rotation. He's going to be 28 in May. And then with Sandy, it's like, he's 30 years old. He's 3 years removed from his best season. He makes decent money, but it's going to be a high prospect capital. And his floor, as opposed to Imai's floor, is a lot lower because he's coming off Tommy John and he can easily just be washed. Whereas I think with Imai, you're getting quality. Like, I feel like at worst, Tatsuya Imai is going to be a number 5. And I feel like at best, he'll be like one of the better number 3s. But I feel like with Sandy, he could be, 5.5 ERA like he was last year, or he could be, a Cy Young candidate like he was when he won it in 2022. Whatever they do, whatever happens, I hope it happens quick because names are coming off the board again. Dylan Cease is with Toronto. Not only Dylan Cease to Toronto, but you have a couple other rivals. You got Helsley going to Baltimore. You've got Devin Williams going to Queens. You got Sonny Gray going to Boston and hyping their fan base up right now. That was cute. So, it'd be nice if the Yankees did something here in the coming days. Who knows if they will, but I think they need it. And I think Sandy Alcantara is definitely a name that they should consider. I don't know if it's my top arm. The guy I was looking at was Dylan Cease, if I'm being honest with you. But if it's like Alcantara or Tatsuya Imai, I don't know. Alcantara, I always go for the more exciting the more exciting name. And he's just, Tatsuya Imai doesn't give me that excitement that Sandy Alcantara does. Again, maybe I'm biased because he's been one of my favorite pitchers. But you let me know what you think. If you don't want this to happen, I totally understand. If you do, I'm on board with it too. But that's all we got. We are 24 minutes in. We'll wrap this one up here. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and I'll see you very soon on BD4. Thank you. Hey guys, thank you for listening to BD4. Be sure to follow us on social media, subscribe to us on YouTube, and give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. We'll see you next time.